So, good evening to everyone joining, or good morning, depending on what part of the world you're in. Today, we're going to be talking about something that's pretty interesting, maybe a little controversial for us. We normally talk
Mhm.
about Portugal. We're going to be talking about Spain, Portugal's old friends and neighbors, and talking about which one might be better to live in, specifically from the point of view of visas. So I'm very excited to do this. I've spent time in both Spain and Portugal, lived a little bit in Valencia and Seville, so I know a little bit about the two different cultures and the pros and cons of each. And I think what I've seen in the last couple of weeks with people coming from the US in particular is they're looking for a way to move to Europe, and often people think Spain, Portugal pretty similar. I could live in one of those countries. They both got sunshine, they've
Mm.
both got beautiful beaches, both got a laid back culture. And the question really for a lot of people, if they don't have a preference for either, is, which one can I actually move to in terms of residency visas? And so I'm talking today with Victor and Rita from Viv Europe, and they actually deal in visas for both countries. So I thought they would be good people to speak to about this. Rita's going to be answering the questions in the background. So there is a Q&A section at the bottom where you can ask any of those. Victor's going to be doing a little bit more of the talking, but answering some of those questions as they come up. Rita, I'm going to let you just introduce yourself a little bit first because we're going to go over to Victor in a second. So tell us a little bit about who you are and how you ended up on this webinar.
Sure, sure. Thank you, James. I actually live in Portugal, in Lisbon, and I work for Viv Europe in the sales department. So I deal with, people who want to move to Portugal or Spain on a daily basis. We've been working a lot with D7s, D8s, non-lucrative digital nomad visas to Spain. I myself am an immigrant, moved to Portugal 5 years ago from Brazil. So I've actually been through the process of immigrating, the wonderful things about, you know, the process and the more, difficult challenges and obstacles that you have to surpass and that make you stronger. So I think I can help both in, um, when it comes to visa details or what is it like to immigrate? So,
Okay, that's fantastic. And Victor, you also came to Portugal as an immigrant, I believe.
Yes, I did. It was actually, in my case, 7 years ago when I came to Portugal, and I decided to move to the north region. Unlike Rita, based in Porto now. When I moved, I moved to Braga, and I mean, 5 years ago, I mean, I've gone through the process of immigrating, just like Rita, and I could see that, there's a need for sometimes there's need for people to have assistance in this process. There's sometimes it's like just too much. I can say because I've gone through the process, and that was the main reason why I decided to create the company. It was me and two Portuguese colleagues at the time. So we started with Europe. And since then, we've been helping people to move to Portugal. And this year, starting in July, we decided to also to expand to Spain. So we kind of get the most, let's say, basic differences when talking about Spain and Portugal. But I'm here to help. It's a pleasure being with you, James, and I appreciate that you invite me for this webinar.
Okay, well, I appreciate you answering all these questions because it's really helpful. So I do know a lot of people are looking more at the north of Portugal as a place to live now, especially as the costs around Lisbon and the Algarve, places like that have gone up a lot more. Well, how the question though that I always find people ask is how bad are the winters in the north? I've heard that they're very cold and grey. Would you say that it's bad and worth avoiding?
Um, I mean, that's a good question. It is definitely cold, at least for my Brazilian standards. And I just came from a trip vacation from London, and I could see that it's not that cold, really.
Okay.
I mean, it can get to around 6 degrees on winters. But I mean, on winters it can be pretty this cold, but in other seasons like spring, summer, it's a very warm place to live here in the north. But it's manageable. I mean, I think it's manageable. Of course, there's the thing related to the structure of buildings to handle the cold here that are not that good if you compare to other countries. But if you have the right tools, the blankets, you can live a good life here.
Yeah, and you have huge benefits of being so close to Spain for those people that choose to live in Portugal, but we're still thinking maybe they would like a little bit of Spanish culture. You're so close to the Spanish border if you ever wanted to pop over there.
Yeah, I mean, very close to Galicia. Even I guess the culture is very similar for Galicia in the north of Portugal. And yeah, I mean, it's a key spot here in the north if you like the cold weather, and logistically you are very close to Spain.
Okay, so definitely somewhere to consider. Just buy a few extra blankets for the winter time.
Yeah, I would say so.
I think it gets a bit more rain as well, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Especially in Braga. I mean, Braga,
Yeah, I've heard.
I don't know why. I guess where it's located, the geographical it's like a veil. It can be very rainy sometimes.
Yeah, I have a friend who lives, well, you used to live in Braga, but I have a good friend who lives there. She said the winters can be rainy, and some people like this, many people like to, a more rainy climate and
Exactly. I do see people coming through. I mean, some people just want the heat and they want that year round, but other people are actually looking for something a little bit milder.
mm-hmm, for sure. Yeah, yeah.
So we've got a few visas to discuss, and if anyone has any questions, there's a Q&A in the bottom, which I know Rita is handling. So we'll start off with the ones that are best suited to retirement, because I know that's the area that people are most interested in. As I understand it, Victor, Spain has what's called a non-lucrative visa, and then Portugal has the D7. Would you say that's sort of accurate?
Yes, so those are the visas that aim people who have some sort of passive income. They are very similar in a way, so they reach out for the same target public, but the requirements they are a little bit different. Just for example, for the Portuguese side, you need to prove that you receive as passive income at least a one Portuguese minimum wage per month. So currently that's 820 euros. On the Spanish side, they are a little more strict in terms of passive income amount, and it's currently roughly 2,400 euros. It is based on a indicator. It's the IPREM. So it's 400 this indicator that take to this amount. So I would say for the passive income visa or non-lucrative visa, the Portuguese threshold is a little bit easier to reach if you do the comparison. I don't know if you want me to be more specific about, or that's enough.
No, that's really, really helpful. So it does sound like, yeah, the Portuguese visa or the Portuguese equivalent is about 3 times less than the Spanish one, which is definitely much better. So do both of them require passive income, or is there an option where savings could be used for either of them?
No, it used to be. Actually, this is a very good question. I know that for those who have been working with visas for some time, we know that this can be a little confused. In the past, there was no digital nomad visa for Portugal, and this question related to savings they usually came up very frequently because I mean can I use savings to apply for the D7 visa? But after the digital nomad visa came to place, now it's very clear that savings are not passive income, not for Portugal, not for Spain. You need to prove that you have any other source of passive income, such as pensions, rents, investments, but savings, um, unfortunately, for most cases, is not a possibility anymore.
Okay, that's unfortunate, but good to know, good to have that information. When we talk about that amount, so the 820 currently for Portugal and the 2,400 for Spain, I assume that's for an individual, and then if you were a couple, you would need a little bit more.
Mhm.
Exactly. Yeah, for the main applicant in Portugal, that's the threshold.
Okay.
As more people join the process as family members, yeah, there is a need to increase this amount. On the Portuguese side, for those adults that will be joining the process, there is a need to add up 50% of this amount,
Mhm.
and for the kids and children, 30%. So this is on the Portuguese side. For the Spanish side, talking about the non-lucrative visa, for each individual that joins the process, it is like 100% of the value. So just sum up the number of people who will join, that must be family member, and they just need to do the math.
Okay, and for those listening from the US, I was just looking at the euro to dollar. It's actually pretty similar. So it's sort of saying 820 euros a month is about $862. So you can basically work with the euro amount, and 2,400 euros is about $2,523. So pretty easy to sort of do the maths in your head at the moment anyway, just to get a rough idea. Okay, so definitely Portugal is winning there, I think. So let's talk. One thing that comes up occasionally is whether you can work on a retirement visa. As far as I know, Portugal doesn't seem to have any restrictions on working
Nope.
remotely or for a Portuguese employer. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, that's correct. You can work here. You can develop business. You can get employed. Be a contractor. There's no restrictions.
And what about Spain?
Yeah, that's another situation in Spain. For the non-lucrative visa, you cannot work in Spain. This is mandatory. So if you cannot get employed in Spain, there is a controversy in regards if you can work remotely. Because the law doesn't state, doesn't go into details. So we usually have a more conservative approach. Me, Rita, when we speak to people, that it can be risky to work as holder of the non-lucrative visa, but there is this situation in place.
Okay, so that's good to know. Rita, were you going to say something? Sorry.
Yes, I'm saying I'm sorry I'm not speaking much. I'm trying to answer the Q&A, so it seems like I'm just here. So I'm sorry, I'm trying to answer the best I can here.
That's quite okay.
Yeah, okay. I noticed there's a misunderstanding in regards to the digital nomad. I think maybe it's something that people would like to clarify, which is some people think to apply for the digital nomad, and I've had people ask me this in the sales meeting. They think that you have to be what's called a autonomous worker and have like several clients, but it doesn't matter whether you are employed by one company or if you have many contracts, as long as you can prove that monthly amount, right? And prove that your work is remote. So I just like to get that out there. So and you can ask me questions. I'm just here trying to answer the Q&As, okay? So
Okay.
not being rude or anything.
Well, thank you, Rita and Victor, for that. That's really good to know because sometimes I see with people coming through that they are starting to receive retirement income or they're eligible to get it, but at the same time they're still working and they could work remotely, and so they're trying to, weigh up, should they be on a digital nomad visa, should they be on a sort of retirement focused visa instead. So it's good to know. It sounds like if you're thinking about that, that Portugal might be the better option if you're thinking about continuing to work at least remotely for a little while receiving some passive income. So next question, one of the big challenges for the D7, at least, and some of the other visas, is that you need to have an address in Portugal before you actually move to Portugal. So most people end up renting a property, but you could also buy a property. Is this also a requirement in Spain?
Another very good question. In Portugal, they are much more strict with this requirement. Usually, the rule is that you have to secure a rental agreement for a whole year or buy a property. This is, of course, it can change the amount of time depending on where you apply for the visa, and this happens a lot. So try to just show the general idea. Where in Spain, they don't say that when I mean they don't, I mean the consulate, that there is a need to secure a rental agreement. But if you go through their website, you can see that it's recommended. It's recommended that you find a place that you rent. The amount of time that they suggest is just 4 months, comparing to the whole year in Portugal. But if I would suggest you how to proceed, I would say go get at least 4 months rental agreement and then and apply for the Spanish visa. Yes.
Okay, good to know. It sounds like Spain is maybe winning on that one a little bit more flexible.
Yeah, certainly.
Okay, so that brings us to another question then that always comes up, which is related to healthcare. So let's start off with Portugal. As I understand it, you need health insurance normally for your IMA appointment. You're generally encouraged to keep that up afterwards, which is a whole other discussion. But as a resident, you're able to access the public health system. Is that correct, Victor? We'll do Portugal first.
Yes, that is correct. Funny enough, I was talking to Rita just about this requirement because it can get really confused sometimes. The thing is, when you apply for a Portuguese visa, you need to secure a international travel insurance, which is not a health insurance. And but so yes, you get the insurance, you come to Portugal, and you will be appointed a meeting here at IMA to get the permit. And in this meeting, it's important for you to have the international health insurance. While for Spain, you have to secure your health insurance from the beginning. It's important to get this is a very important document for the Spanish side, but this is how it works.
Okay, and if I once I become like resident in, am I only able to access sort of the private hospitals and pay with private health insurance, or do I get access to the public system as well?
So without having a private insurance, you can use the public healthcare system. Just to give you a brief idea, you will be appointed a family doctor, and this person will be your, let's say, responsible doctor to talk to. If you have anything, this is the person that you will you schedule an appointment with this person, and you can be directed to a specialist if that's the case. And you can have access to the doctor no matter if you pay social security or not. And this is also a very common question. You have access to public healthcare system both in Spain and in Portugal. So yeah, but if you want a private go to a private hospital, sometimes you will you have specific disease that requires special attention, then it makes sense to have a private insurance and you be able to go to private hospitals.
Can
Okay.
I ask a question?
Yeah.
Something I'm not sure about Spain, because I know, please correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I understand, for example, if you're an American and you get Social Security for a state's pension, something like that, from what I've seen in the law, it's only taxed in the US if it's like a pension or Social Security. This I'm talking about to Portugal. Is it the same to Spain, Victor? Do you know?
Yes, because there is an agreement between Portugal and United States, and I'm pretty sure there's a very similar agreement between Spain and United States where you won't have to pay a social security here in some specific situations. So yeah, you have to pay here as well.
Thank you. I wasn't sure.
So that's good to know. The next thing that I noticed, and I don't know if this is correct, Victor, you can tell me, is the Spanish visa, from what I could see, was valid for 1 year and then renewable for 2 years at a time, whereas the Portuguese equivalent, the D7, you would initially get for 2 years and then that would be renewable for 3. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So that means less visa appointments if you go the Portuguese route, at least. I think that's always a good thing from the Portuguese side anyway, if you can avoid that. I don't know what the Spanish equivalent of IMA is like. I don't know if you've had much experience of that, but overall, I think just gathering documents every few years, it's best avoided if you can do it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, James. For the non-lucrative visa, that is the rule. So it's 1 year plus 2 plus 2, and then you can apply for the long-term or the permanent permit. And the Portuguese structure regarding immigration, it's a little bit more simple if you compare to the Spanish one. Here, everything takes place at IMA. This is the only for the good or for the bad. In Spain, you have police office, you have also city hall. There are more agencies that deals with immigrations, more decentralized. So this is the main difference.
Okay, so it's a slightly different setup they have there. Okay, so judging from the comments anyway, the main problem with the Spanish one that people are saying is that if, you know, if you're a retiree, you might not have 2,400 euros as an individual, and that's not including if you want to have a spouse or partner come with you. So it does seem like you know, if your options are limited with regards to income, then Portugal is definitely the winner here. There are some, you know, some small benefits certainly to the Spanish one with regards to not needing to have a 12-month rental contract. That's quite a nice bonus for sure. But overall, I don't know. Maybe I'm biased, but I feel like the Portuguese one is winning here.
Um, yes, I agree. I mean, we can then also talk a little about the digital nomad visa,
Yeah.
but for certainly for those who have passive income, the Portuguese D7 visa seems more we have more advantages comparing to the Spanish side. I always like to joke that Portugal is made for more of people who are trying to chill out a little bit, you know, more easygoing and not focusing too much on work. And the Spanish visa is more you. I talk a little about the digital nomad. It is more focused on those who want to work. They are younger. This is a very a general approach, of course, but if you go see the requirements for the visas, that seems to be the case.
Yeah, it does look like that is the, you know, the focus of the two countries.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we
And
should. Oh yeah,
so
go on.
sorry to interrupt. So there's something that's been coming up also in my sales meeting, and that we have here Michael Sutton who's asking about this, and I've had different opinions about this. Some people, you know, they don't have the monthly income, but they do have a lot in savings. So what they do is they convert it to an annuity, right? A private annuity that provides them monthly income. Okay. Now, if I'm a a Portuguese official, and I see that this person has an annuity for a huge amount of time, and that they've been receiving this passive income for at least 3 to 6 months, I would say that's fine for D7. But I would like your opinions.
I totally agree with you, Rita. Um, I mean, there is a requirement for you to prove that you've been receiving this passive income for at least 3 months. So this is important to consider. But there, people they can use their financial situation to adapt to start receiving passive income to apply for the D7, for example. That's totally fine.
Okay.
Well, should we jump onto the digital nomad visa?
Yeah, yeah. So do you want me to just give a background?
Yeah, let's start with the income requirement. So as far as I know, Portugal is higher on this regard.
Yes, that's certainly point for Spain. uh, in Portugal, you need to prove that you receive as income from the remote work at least 4 Portuguese minimum wages. That will sum up to 3,280 euros per month. So this is the Portuguese requirement. as for the Spanish side, it's roughly 2 times the Spanish minimum wage. That will be roughly 2,650 euros. So it's a little more on the Portuguese side. So it's a point for Spain.
And what about the requirements if you have, a spouse or partner and children in Portugal, sorry, does this follow the same sort of 50% and 30% rule?
Yeah, for the Portuguese side, yes. So there's the same rule. As for the Spanish side, it's a little bit different from the non-lucrative. So for the first dependent, you have to add up 75% of the minimum wage. That will be roughly 990 something euros per month. And for the kids, yeah, it's just there's a need to add up 25%, around 330 euros. So yeah, there's a slight difference for the Spanish side.
Okay, so it sounds like overall, Spain has a much lower requirement, especially once you start adding on family members. And I think the minimum wage is due to increase in Portugal next month. Once you start multiplying that by four, it means the digital nomad visa starts getting even more expensive, and it's going to increase, I think, over the next few years, isn't it? It's supposed to go up sort of 50 euros a year.
Sorry,
And
James, sorry to interrupt, guys. So I think it's important. Somebody's asking about, the situation at IMA and the backlog, and it is a reality. I think it's important just to mention they've been trying to improve this. I believe it will improve. I have hope, and but I think it's good to talk about this. And also, I did have someone mention that there are questions also on the chat, but I can't manage them both. I'm sorry. So if you have a question, put it in the Q&A, because then I'll focus on that. Okay.
that's a good point, Rita, and especially talking about the digital nomad, because it's true that IMA is like overwhelmed with process. There is a huge backlog, and Portugal is trying to deal with the situation as much as possible. And I did, and then when I talked about that Portugal has a very that just IMA is the only agency that deals with visas and immigration. If this agency is overloaded with process, it's really hard to I mean to have a specific deadline, let's say like this. And talking about the digital nomad in Spain, the good thing, and this is another point for Spain, is that you can start the process in Spain, and you cannot do that in Portugal. So if you enter Spain legally with the documents to apply for the digital nomad, you can just kind of skip the line and apply for the process in Spain. And there's another bonus here, is that if you follow this process, your first permit will be valid for 3 years instead of just 1 year if you apply from your home country. So they even stimulate people to move to Spain and start the process there. And that's another reason why the digital nomad in Spain, it seems a little bit more a better choice sometimes.
Okay, and then speaking of sort of the backlog with IMA and processing times with the D7 and the digital nomad visa, if I was to submit an application for either of those tomorrow, I went on. How long would it be before I get my appointment at the consulate?
Yeah.
Looking for very exact answers here.
No such thing as I'm just...
I mean, it depends on where you are applying for the visa. One um, that's one thing for sure. And we, I mean, and this changed from time to time. Like now we can see that especially in the United States, it's not as easy as it was before to schedule an appointment, especially in Washington, D.C., also California. So when it comes the time to schedule the appointment, that's when you will have a better idea. What I can tell you is that it's not always that they have appointment available for visas, and yeah, this is another. It's not a situation to manage.
Oh,
It,
sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, I was just going to say it's a difficult one because a lot of people sort of want to know what's the time frame for moving to Portugal, like,
Um,
what happens in month one, month two, month three, and it's sometimes a little difficult to say exactly what that's going to look like. Rita, you were going to say something.
Yes, just some things that people are asking and it's coming up. So one thing that is important to know is that you cannot apply for a resident visa from Portugal. Okay, there's one exception, and it's a very specific visa. It's called the D3 highly qualified professionals, and that's if you're applying for work in a specific area. That's the only exception where you can apply within Portugal. For all other types of visas, you're going to need to apply from your home country. When it comes to Spain, there's one visa. You can apply for the digital nomad in Spain. Okay, you have to apply within 3 months of your tourist time there. But in Portugal, no, you apply in your home country. So that's one thing that's coming up. Also, somebody asks, how do I apply for Spain's non-lucrative visa? Do I have to go through VFS? Please say that I don't. I'm not so sure, but I don't think they have VFSs in Spain.
No,
Yeah,
it's
so it's from consulates.
Yeah, usually it's through the consulates directly. They have a website where you can log in and start the application without any intermediary, just like VFS in Portugal.
Okay, thank you.
Let's talk about taxes, which is everybody's favorite subject, I guess. One of the ones that always comes up a lot. So, up until last year, I guess, digital nomads could quite easily qualify for the NHR program. That's now ended, and there's possibly a new one, which I'll get Victor to sort of explain. Spain is, am I right in saying that they also have a sort of tax scheme for digital nomads and that one is still current?
Yes, that's correct, James. So the NHR in Portugal was terminated in 2020, December 2023. And there is a period where people still can apply for the NHR if they can comply with some requirements. But overall, there's no NHR anymore. There is a replacement. So there is a specific tax incentive program called the Fiscal Incentive for Scientific Research and Innovation. This is being called the NHR 2.0. This is a regime that's currently in terms of becoming official, because there are many requirements that needs to be approved to become in like proper action. It's not the case. And the rules for this tax regime will be very similar to the old NHR. So it's a 20% flat rate for the income that you receive in Portugal. There is the 10% for many type of income that you bring to Portugal. So the benefits will be very similar to the old NHR. But still, we are waiting to see when those regulations will be in place. While from the Spanish side, there is the well-known Beckham law. And in the beginning, this tax incentive was focused on those who were like working in Spain. But with the digital nomad visa in place, there was kind of an expansion of the concept, and even digital nomads can apply for this tax regime. And with this one, you will be taxed at a flat 24% on your income. And if I remember well, this one will be valid for the next 6 years, while the NHR used to be 10 years. It seems that the new one will also be valid for 10 years, but this is the Spanish Beckham law.
Okay, that is interesting. So there's, there's pros and cons to both of them. And maybe if you're concerned about taxes, it would be good to speak to someone who's like yourselves, who understand both and can say, actually, you might have a better chance in Spain or Portugal qualifying for the rates. Am I correct in saying that I think this 24% tax goes up to something like 600,000 euros or something like that. And then do you get to avoid the Spanish wealth tax as well if you're under this Beckham law?
That's a good question, James.
Okay.
I can check with that. We work with also tax lawyers, and I can check if the Beckham law will also applies when you compare the wealth tax in Spain. But that's certainly one of those questions that we will answer later.
Okay, that's a good one, and one that, yes, you definitely want someone to look into and get a specific answer for. Because I think, on the sort of when people are weighing up Spain and Portugal, for some people, one of the major downsides, if they have, a large amount of assets, is the wealth tax there. So if that allowed people to avoid it, then it could make Spain a consideration. But if you are like myself and you don't have huge numbers of assets everywhere, then it might not make a difference. Let's see. So,
Can I clarify something? Sorry, Jim. So I was saying, right, about applying from your home country. It's either your home country, just clarify, or a country where you have residency. So, for example, you may be, your home country may be, I don't know, Chile, but you have residency in the US. So you're going to apply from the US. So it's either your home country or where you have your most recent residency, just to be clear. What else? Let me see. Something that people, I think, would be interested in, actually, Jeffers Richardson's asking, is about the residency rules. So once you get your visa granted, and I'm speaking for both, Portugal and Spain, once you get your visa granted and then you move and you get your residency sorted and you get your resident card, what are the rules in terms of how long, can you spend outside the EU? I know for Portugal, you can spend 6 consecutive months or 8 non-consecutive months, right, per year, or per validation of that first 2-year period of your resident card. If you want to repeat that, Victor, because some people are asking.
That's a very, very popular question. And the Spanish side is more straightforward. It's 6 months per year. On the Portuguese side, it's 6 consecutive months or 8 non-consecutive months. You cannot be outside Portugal based on the residence period. That's usually 2 years in this when you first move to Portugal.
Are you asking me a question? Sorry. No.
No,
No, that's it. That's
Oh,
it.
okay.
And then we have some questions about NHR and retirees. So if the new NHR comes in, at the moment, it doesn't seem like there's going to be anything in there, a flat rate for retirement income. Is that correct, Victor? It seems to be more based on startups, working professionals, especially in certain industries.
Exactly.
Okay.
Mm.
That is a shame. But I do think that, if you are concerned about that, it's, don't write off Portugal or Spain straight away because particularly in the US, you have so many other costs. You have many taxes. You have, your federal, you have your state taxes, and then you have your healthcare costs and things like that. And so it's a good idea to actually speak to someone in Portugal that can help you work out what your taxes would be, actually sit down and work out what you're paying in the US, and maybe consider things like higher costs there, so grocery costs, things like that, and then work out, is it going to be as bad as I think, or is it going to be manageable? Uh, let's do healthcare then for digital nomads. Can digital nomads use the public healthcare system as well? Are they supposed to get private health insurance? And we'll cover obviously Spain and Portugal for this.
Yeah. So in both cases, digital nomads, they can use public healthcare. So this is very the structure of healthcare in both Portugal and Spain is to allow what they call universal healthcare. The thing is, being a digital nomad, depending on where your employer is based, uh, your healthcare is already being considered in your salary. So your employer will deduct the healthcare. And if Portugal and, let's say, United States, and that is the case, they have this agreement where your employer will still be deducting your healthcare and you won't have to pay healthcare in Portugal and still use the services. There are some exceptions also depending on the amount of time that you will be living in Portugal. But the basic rule is that if Portugal and your employer's country have an agreement and threat, you will not be needing to pay social security in Portugal and still use the public system.
They're asking for you to explain the wealth tax in Spain. I think two people asked about the wealth tax and if Portugal has that as well.
Yeah, a good question. Portugal does not have a wealth tax. In its point for Portugal. In Spain, there is the wealthy tax, and it's the general income that you need to start paying tax. It's around 600,000 euros, but there are some specificities regarding the region where you live. So it can be even less. I guess in Catalonia, if I remember well, it's 500,000. So there's those specifics. But yeah, in Spain, yeah.
Is that income per year, the 500,000 or 600,000?
It's yes, it's per year, exactly.
So it's quite a high level, but some people listening may be at that level, but a lot of people won't be. So it's worth considering. If certainly if you were fall into that category, it would definitely mean Portugal is more interesting at that point. Inheritance tax is another thing that occasionally comes up. I know we didn't discuss this beforehand, Victor, but Portugal doesn't really have inheritance tax. I think there's a small stamp duty or something, but not a major inheritance tax. Is that correct?
Exactly. Exactly. That's the case. Portugal, we don't have inheritance tax, but yeah, the stamp tax is just small amount that you pay for the inheritance itself. In Spain, I'm not sure. I have to do a double check here. But in Portugal, that's for sure. There's no inherent tax.
Well, I don't know what you think. I mean, I don't want Spain to win, obviously, running Portugalist and that. But I have to say the Spanish digital nomad visa does have a lot of pros to it. You can come to Spain, presumably find your accommodation once you arrive, then apply, and then get a 3-year visa. The income requirements are lower. And at the moment, their tax rate is already confirmed for, for digital nomads. We don't know what the Portuguese one will be yet. We have a rough idea, but don't know for certain. So there's definitely a lot of pros to the Spanish one, but I think it does sort of come down as well to, a little bit of where do you want to live. Barcelona and Madrid are obviously great places for digital nomads, but Lisbon is a huge hub for this right now. Madeira is another one, the Algarve, Ericeira, they're all fantastic places to live. What do you think, Victor and Rita? Do you have any decision on which is the better visa of the two?
Are we talking about the retirement or digital
The
nomad?
digital nomad.
Yeah, Rita, as you live in Lisbon, you can give us a clue.
I love Lisbon. I'm completely biased, okay? I like Spain, of course. I've been to Madrid and Seville, and I think it's also very interesting, but it's a special city. There are many things going on. There are museums and exhibits, and I think there's a side to the Portuguese people that there's like they're gentle and usually welcoming, and at the same time that it's bustling, it's calm.
Mhm.
And so I don't know. I think it depends on your personality. It's quite different. I think Spanish people tend to be a little bit more loud and a little bit more out there, and and I think here it's bustling but calm. So I think you need to do some research and see it's not how can I say, it's not like a recipe, like it's not
Mhm.
it's what fits your personality, right? Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't really answer.
No, no,
I,
I,
uh, I was just gonna say I'll just that I'm going to have to go soon. I'm so sorry because I do have a meeting. And I think there's something that, and I wasn't able to answer everybody. I'm so sorry. I did the best I could. I think there's something about the visa process that people, it's just so much information. It's hard to see how it works in terms of like logic and the where do I start? Do I get a house first, but then don't I need a NIF, and then but don't I need this, don't I need that, and I don't think I can explain it in 6 minutes, okay? But I think it's something that people are a bit confused. We can even talk about this on another webinar. um, but there's something, polls and quizzes here. Sorry, something popped up. So anyway, we can answer this in our next webinar. And remember, you can always, and I'm sorry, I'm not using this for advertising, but you can always schedule a meeting. It's a free meeting, and I can explain many things about the visa. Okay, I'm gonna have to go. I'm so sorry. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure having you, and I really appreciate all the insights that you've given. I think people really appreciate your sort of insight into Lisbon and the differences between Spain and Portugal there. And I'm sure that any questions that aren't answered, I'll get them forwarded over to you and Victor, and
Sure,
get back in touch with people directly.
of course. Okay, then. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Also, James, and just so going back to the question in regards to digital nomads, if Portugal or Spain, um, I tend to agree with Rita that in terms of living in the place, I'm more on the easygoing side. So for me, it's Portugal. It's a very personal thing, but I agree that the visa to Spain is it's tends to be easier.
Yeah, the visa process is easier. Possibly if the new NHR 2.0 comes in, that's, 10 years at 20%, that's going to be better than if it is sort of 6 years at 24%.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a pro for Portugal there. And another thing we haven't discussed is that, in Portugal, English is widely spoken. That can be very helpful if you're just moving over. Spain, it varies, but in my experience, it's not always the case, or very much not the case. In some of the parts of Spain that I've been to, that can be good because it means you immediately start speaking the language and you learn very fast. Whereas in Portugal, it's very easy to speak English all the time. But for those who are concerned about moving to a foreign country and having to speak another language, it is a little bit easier if people do speak English.
Yeah. It's funny because when you go to Spain, it's so. I mean, when I go to the movies, for example, everything is like dubbed in Spanish. So
Yeah.
it's a funny thing, and I agree with you, James. There's some pros and cons, and I like the fact that they try to protect their language in this way. But yeah, it seems for me, especially nowadays, it's easy to communicate in English in Portugal, especially if you go to the big cities.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. Um, okay, so I have put up a poll to anybody that wants to request a call with you and your team, Victor, so that they can um, get information about moving to Portugal or Spain, or if they're not sure, you can sort of help them decide and do a sort of visa assessment. One other question that I've seen come up a few times is whether you can buy a house in either of the two countries and qualify for residency that way.
Good question. And this is confusion sometimes with the golden visa. So in the past, you used to be able to apply for the golden visa in Portugal if you were to buy a house that with a specific amount of money. And but nowadays that's not possible anymore. The Portuguese golden visa still exists. It's important to highlight that because many people think that there's no more golden visa. There is, but the investment options, they are not the same. Nowadays, the most popular one is to invest in a fund, in a Portuguese fund, while in Spain, it still exists, the golden visa, the property one, but it has been going through many changes recently, and probably in this month there won't be a property related golden visa anymore in Spain. But that's the system nowadays.
Okay, that's good to know. The Spanish option for investing in funds or in companies, when I looked at it, seemed to be an investment of about €1 million, if I'm correct, whereas the Portuguese one was only 500,000 euros. Okay, so there's a much smaller investment for Portugal if you are considering that route.
Yeah.
The benefits of the both of them seem to be more or less the same in terms of you only need to really spend a minimal amount of time in either sort of, 7 days per year on average. In Portugal, Spain, I couldn't find out what the exact amount was, but it just sort of seemed to be you had to visit once a year or something along those lines.
Exactly. It's very similar. That's because the main purpose for the golden visa is that you invest in the country, but that doesn't require you to live there. So it's really an investment that you make. And in this regard, many people they of course they want the investment, but they're looking for the passport, the citizenship. And in considering the golden visa, the Portuguese one will grant you citizenship in 5 years. There has been a change recently in regards to when these 5 years starts counting. And that's like really good news that starts from when you apply for the golden visa. And in Spain, you have to wait for 10 years to become a Spanish citizen. So that's the main difference.
That's quite a big difference, especially if you're doing the golden visa and you're, mainly just looking for an additional passport. 5 years is not a huge amount of time. 10 is a lot, and I think in Portugal the processing time now, I don't know if you can speak to that, Victor, is roughly, I mean, it varies, but people are sort of saying somewhere around 2 years. Is that correct? I don't know what the Spanish side is like, but that could potentially make it even longer than 10 years.
Yeah, I'm for the Spanish, for the Portuguese side, you were totally correct. Um, I mean, you will have to wait for a while to receive the permit, but the time is counting. The 5 years is counting. For the Spanish side, I spoke to some lawyers, and it seems the process is much, much quicker.
Okay.
So, in a matter of some months, you should be receiving your permit. But so meaning you can, with the permit, you can move to Spain and live there. But you have to wait for 10 years to become a citizen. That's the main difference.
Okay. Yeah, I think, the Portuguese one, there might be a big backlog, but if, sometimes 18 months or so, um, if your goal isn't actually to move to Portugal and that time is already counting towards citizenship, it's not necessarily the end of the world, definitely frustrating, but you're still going to get your passport application in the same amount of time as you would. Um, let's see what else we have. So the when we talk about citizenship as well, which is obviously a big thing for people coming from outside of the EU, they are looking for a second passport or a different passport. Um, is it true that Spain doesn't allow dual citizenship?
No, you can apply for both in Portugal and Spain allow dual citizenship.
Okay.
It's just you have to check if your current nationality allows dual citizenship. I know that in India there is a restriction, not in the United States. So you have to see your birth nationality if allows you to have dual citizenship.
Okay, and I understand both of them have the same language requirement, which is an A2 level. I think, some people will say that Spanish is easier to learn as a foreigner, up for debate, certainly. But for Americans who have, so much Spanish spoken there, that might be something that's easier. But I guess once you're getting to the 5-year mark to apply for citizenship or the 10-year mark, you should be roughly at an A2 level at least anyway. It should be doable. So it shouldn't matter too much whether it's Spanish or Portuguese. I'm guessing Portuguese was obviously an easy one for you, Victor, coming from Brazil, but there must have been some differences.
Oh my. Yeah, so I came to Portugal thinking that that would be a piece of cake, that I would be able to speak to everybody. And then when I came to Portugal, I started to work in a telecommunication company. But I moved to Braga. They have a slightly different accent here. And man, I couldn't understand a word. And I'm not kidding. I thought that it seems like they were speaking Russian. It was so different from Portuguese. But in time, you kind of get the pace and you understand better. So it was even a struggle for me in the beginning. But I mean, and I agree with you. For Americans, probably Spanish is due to how close they are to Mexico, and then the Spanish that is spoken in some parts of the United States tends to be easier, but both are very similar, Portuguese and Spanish. I do think so.
Both are very easier. I think, we're talking a lot about like, do I move to Portugal? Do I move to Spain? The countries are, right next to each other. So whichever one you pick, you'll be able to visit the other one frequently. If you learn Portuguese, you will start to pick up Spanish. You will, be able to read a lot of Spanish and things like that. So you're not necessarily picking one or the other as a final choice for the rest of your life. You're whichever one you go to, you could potentially spend time in the other and get to experience the culture of the other one as well. And there's, plenty of Spanish people in Portugal. I assume there are plenty of Portuguese people in Spain too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, Victor, I'm just going to quickly check if we have one or two more questions that we could answer now, but we probably won't get through all of them. I'm going to have to send these to you afterwards. Let's see what one. So we've had people asking for your contact information. So there is a poll here if you want to fill that in. Otherwise, I'll definitely send your information out afterwards. This has been recorded, so I'll share the recording with everyone as well, and contact details and everything like that. Let's see again, a lot of thank yous to both you and Rita. Let's see what else we have. A lot of questions about working remotely as well. So I think we have covered all of that.
Can see some regarding the ETIAS. That is something that will be in place in the future. It's just, before being able to travel to Portugal or Spain, there will be a need to fill out some information online, but it seems to be very simple.
I think so, and yeah, it's a sort of, as I understand it, a similar thing to what people going into the US normally have to fill out. So, a little information about you and pay a small fee, but it shouldn't be a major thing. Victor, as someone who has moved then to Portugal and moved especially to the north of Portugal, you get experience of Braga and Porto. What sort of advice would you give people now thinking about moving here and getting ready to potentially start a new life in Portugal or Spain if you chose the wrong answer?
I would say that just come to one of those countries knowing that you face many you face something that you sometimes in the United States seems to be the basic rule, but here that's not the case. There will be some cultural shocks, that's for sure. There will be a need for you to be open to those changes. Usually we are more our pace is not that speedy as you find in the United States. So just know that you need to adapt. There is a need to adapt, but in time you will kind of, I'm pretty sure that you kind of like at least I can say for myself, being Brazilian, which the culture is very similar to the United States. I also, when I moved to Portugal, I thought that, oh man, nothing works here. What's going on? I sent an email, but I I haven't received a reply for 1 week. These things happen. That's something very cultural. But try to embrace the difference, and in time, I'm pretty sure that you prefer this more easygoing way of living.
Yeah, there's pros and cons to both ways of life, and there isn't a perfect country. You can't really take the speediness and the excellent customer service that you get in the US without, having to have, the higher cost of living that comes with living there, less safety, etc. Whereas in Portugal, you have some downsides for sure. You start to get used to them after a while, though, and you have a lot of upsides. You have, lower cost of living, certainly when compared to the US. Safety, I think, is a huge one, and certainly more family friendly culture, sort of more laid back place to live. So it definitely is about weighing the pros and cons, but as you say, also being aware of the differences.
Yeah.
Well, Victor, I really appreciate everything that you've shared here. Hopefully, it's given people an idea of which country might be right for them. I know from talking the numbers, especially of the retirement-focused visas, that's definitely made the decision easy for some people. But I think overall, people should have a better idea of what their options are for both countries. So I really appreciate it, and hopefully have you back again sometime soon.
Yeah, thank you so much, James, for the opportunity. Really enjoyed spending time with you and your audience, and I'm here for you. And just let me know if you want to have another one. I'm here.
Okay. Thanks, Victor. See you next time. Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Thank you. Bye.